Alright folks, welcome back to another Angular video. In this series we've been relearning Angular. It's something I've done in the past on this channel and I've kind of forgotten Angular, so I thought it'd be a fun series to go ahead and relearn some of the concepts in Angular. Whether you're new entirely or you're like me, you're just wanting to refresh, I think you'll find this series helpful, and feel free to go back to the beginning of the playlist and follow along through all these videos. You'll see that they flow hopefully pretty well and you'll easily follow along. And today we're going to create our first service. We're going to talk about what services are, what they do, why you might want to use them, and we're going to create one, have it serve up some data, and then in future videos we'll talk about other things like dependency injection and whatever else I can think of. So what are services? Services are pretty much, as described here, a broad category. So it's pretty general to say a service, but really it's just doing something, and it's doing that one particular thing, as they say here, well. It says a service is typically a class with a narrow, well-defined purpose. It should do something specific and do it well. Typically anything that you're going to use in multiple components, you want to put inside of a service, and that way you can call the service and use it throughout multiple components. Another reason you might want to use the service is you have some business logic, right? You don't want to put the business logic inside of the components TypeScript class. Rather, put that inside of a service. Pluralsight.com, they have tutorial videos. They say a reusable Angular service is designed to encapsulate business logic and data with different components of Angular. So just think of it as a place to store your code that you will be able to use throughout the application itself. And right now I have the app running, and I'm going to tell you what I want to do with our particular service. And yeah, let's look at it. So I have this test component. I think we created this at the very beginning of our app. This was like the first component that we ever created. And inside of the TypeScript, I have this movies, and really it's titles. Maybe I should call it movie titles. And it's just a string array of a bunch of different movie titles. Some that I particularly like. Well, actually, all of these I really like. And I don't think we use this component anymore. I didn't see it. And of course, it failed to compile now that I changed the name of it. But really, I want to get rid of test component altogether. So I guess the first thing I want to do is look at the app module. And let's just get rid of test component entirely. So it's no longer going to be bootstrapped with the application. We'll remove it from the declarations array and also from the imports up here. And now it'll compile successfully because it has no clue about it. It doesn't know about the test component anymore. But what I want to do is I want to take this movie titles and I want to place it in a service and also create a method in that service that's going to return these movie titles, this array of strings. And so creating a service is really simple. Before we create it though, I'm going to create a new folder, not in the test. I want to create it in the app. And this folder is just going to hold our services. So in this services is where I'm going to hold all of our services, and I'm going to open a new terminal and let's cd to our project. And the command to create a service is ng generate, instead of component, as we've done before with C, we do S for service, and then we give it some kind of name. So I'm just going to name this movies. And here it's going to create, the service spec TypeScript file and also the service TypeScript file. The spec, as we mentioned before, is for testing purposes, which we're not going to use, so I'm going to just delete it. And now our movies service, I'm going to move to the services directory that we created. So right in there. And here it is. Here's our service. It looks pretty similar to the TypeScript file of a component, right? It's just an exportable class. And this is a little bit different, but we'll talk about that in the next video when we talk about dependency injection. But the main focus here is what's going on in the class. So I'm going to take that movies or movie titles array, and I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to paste it inside of this class. And then let's also create a method in this class called getMovies, right? And it's going to return a string array. And we're just going to return this dot movie titles. So the movie titles array inside of this class. And that's it. So now what I can do is I can call the service, and more particularly, I can call this getMovies method, and it'll return all of the movies in our movie title array. And we can use that now in our component. So our home component, let's do just that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new property called movies, and it's going to be of type string array. And it's going to complain because it has no initializer and we don't give it any value. So what we want to do is we want to set movies equal to that getMovies method that we created inside of that service. And so to reference that service, inside of the constructor parentheses, let's reference the service that we just created. So I'll call it movie service, if I can type, and it's going to be of type movie service until IntelliSense knows what we're trying to do. And then inside of the constructor, right, what gets ran whenever the class is instantiated, we want to do this dot movies is equal to the movie service dot get movies. We're going to call that method we created. So this movies property right here is going to now be populated with all of those movie titles. And now in the HTML, what I can do is I can loop through using the ng4 directive and display all of those movie titles. So let's give it a paragraph, and we'll say ng4, and let x of movies, and let's just interpolate the value of x. So it's going to loop through that movies array and display each one of them as a paragraph. So let's see if this works. I guess I didn't need to do much. We're already looking at the home page, but let's refresh just or go back and forth maybe. There we go. Shows all of the movies now in paragraphs, because we're using that service once again to call and grab us all of the titles and then display them using the ng4 directive. Now, if I wanted to in a different component, this is what's nice, like the about component, for example, I could do the same thing. I could do movie service of type movie service and also call it within this particular TypeScript class as well of this component. But I don't really want to. It doesn't make sense to do it here. We don't want to do it in places where we don't use it. But I was just doing that just to show you how you can call it in multiple components and use it there in multiple components. And that's what makes it nice. And really what it does, it just allows us separation between the component and some other logic that the component might not care about, right? It doesn't care about that getMovies method. It's just going to call it and expect to get some kind of result. And that way we have that separation there. Hopefully this all made sense. Feel free to play around with your own component. Do what I did. Just store an array in that component and then create a method where you return that array and then call that service and that method in one of your components and then display the values. In the far future, in a couple of videos probably, we'll call an API in the service rather than having hard-coded values, and then display the values from the REST call or the API call. But you created your first service. If you're following along, congratulations. Thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something from this, and I hope to see you in the next video.